It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former Assistant U.S. Attorney General and candidate for L.A. County District Attorney. You can get him online at nathanhochman.com. Nathan Hochman, welcome.
Thank you, John. Great to be on the show again.
So yesterday we had a conversation with one of your competitors, Eric Siddall, that kind of the needle went off the record a little bit. I asked him a question to begin the interview that was not a trick question in any way about Prop 47, and it surprised me that he doesn't want to repeal Prop 187. He only wants to repeal certain portions of Prop 47, but overall he thinks Prop 47 is a good initiative passed by the voters. So let's start out by talking about Prop 47. If elected district attorney, would you campaign to repeal Prop 47 from the books here in the state of California?
I would repeal. I would campaign to repeal it from the books of the state of California. And as a proposition, it was sold to the voters as the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act back in 2014. It was actually co-written by George Gascon when he was the DA in San Francisco. And what it's turned out to be is anything other than creating safe neighborhoods and schools. I think if the voters understood that Gascon would not only be the co-author of it, but eventually be the DA in Los Angeles and not even enforce the misdemeanor provision. If someone steals less than $950, rather than committing a felony, they commit a misdemeanor. But George Gascon has a blanket policy of never prosecuting a misdemeanor theft case. So I think if the voters understood that what they were basically signing up for is allowing anyone to go into the store or a restaurant or a CVS or a small, mom and pop store, steal just under $950 and walk, not run out because the district attorney will not bring the case, I don't think they would have voted for it in the first place. So I have absolutely no problem saying that I would work to campaign to reform Proposition 47. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that I'm looking to put people who steal just under $950 in jail for 100 years. Obviously not. If someone is a first-time nonviolent offender, they might be at that crossroads in life where if you give them community service or a diversion program, they can change their life and never go back in the criminal justice system. But again, what you cannot do is pretend that they didn't commit the crime and have a blanket policy of decarceration or no incarceration like Gascon has.
Why do you think so many politicians in California are afraid to say that Prop 47 has to go? And I say that because we play the sound from these press conferences on a daily basis, whether it's Newsom, Rob Bonta, Karen Bass, whoever. They all seem to recognize that crime is a problem and it's causing businesses to close down. It's causing businesses to move out of state. It's causing people to feel unsafe in their own communities. Mom and pop businesses in particular, it's been catastrophic for. If you have someone bust up your shop and you have $70,000 worth of damage, that's one thing for Target. That's another thing if you're operating a one shop jewelry shop, as we saw happen here in Los Angeles County not long ago. But they won't say that Prop 47 has to go. They just walk right up to the line and they will not cross it. Why do you think so many of them are afraid to say it's got to go?
I think the reason they're afraid to say it has to go is that they would have to acknowledge that what Proposition 47 has created is a spiral of lawlessness, where if you allow basically people to walk into a CVS or a Walgreens or a mom and pop and steal just under $950, that happens with one person. Then the next day it happens with two. Then you see 20 people running out of a Nordstrom's. You see 100 people literally in a flash mob stealing out of a 7-Eleven. Then you have smash and grab robberies because you've created a culture of unaccountability, a culture of lawlessness that is spiraling upwards. I think what happens is if you recognize that you need to take strong stances and say, look, we're going to create a spiral of lawfulness, basically arresting the other spiral and sending it in the other direction. And that does require people to be held accountable. So whether or not, and by the way, it's people across the board. The evidence dictates what the prosecutor should do, not the political ideology. So often these politicians are basically making decisions based on political ideology and not the evidence in the law. My goal, what I would swear to do if I raise my right hand and swear to uphold the law, is just that. I uphold all the laws. I don't uphold just the laws that I think are good or the ones that I like.
How big of a component are drugs in all of this? And I say that because the state of California has moved to decriminalize drugs in every imaginable way. And as soon as we started doing that, we started really with marijuana, and we've moved on to other drugs. The governor, thankfully, just vetoed a bill that would have essentially decriminalized psychedelics in the state of California. But the more permissive the attitude that we have towards drugs in California, the more you see our cities deteriorate. You see crime accepted. You see the homeless encampments all over. You see mentally ill people out on the streets. You see the trash. You see the dirt. It just doesn't look like a clean, inviting place. It looks like a zombie apocalypse movie. From your perspective, how much of the problem is fueled by drugs?
Well, focusing first on our homeless population, they estimate that over 70% of the homeless population suffers from a drug addiction, serious mental illness, or both. And the problem is that if someone has, picture this, a serious drug addiction, most likely they've lost their job, most likely they're cut off from their family, most likely their friends have also cut them off, but they still have to feed this drug addiction every day. So once their savings are depleted, particularly if they're out on the street, there's no other way to go ahead and feed that drug addiction other than committing crimes. Now, they don't have to rob a bank necessarily, but George Gascon has allowed them to go into a convenience store, take just under $950, give it to a fence on the street. Maybe they trade that for $400, or they trade that for the drugs that they're on, and then rinse and repeat and do this every single day because their drug addiction is going nowhere. If you allow and you create basically for drug addiction what they've actually created for mental illness, these CARES courts. Basically, a CARE court allows a judge to order residential mental health treatment for someone with a serious mental illness, something we have not seen in 40 years. We need the CARES court option for people with drug addictions, where a judge can actually order someone who has that addiction into a residential program that they cannot leave for 12 months with a period of time determined to deal with it, so that they actually can get their hands around their drug problem, which gives them their one and only chance to be a productive member of society again.
We're speaking with Nathan Hochman, candidate for district attorney in Los Angeles County. You can find him online at nathanhochman.com. Nathan, I want to ask you a question about insurance, which typically is not a question I would assume that comes up in races regarding DA's office, but I think it's relevant this time around. People in the state of California, people in Los Angeles County, are being booted off of their insurance policies for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons that the insurance companies are kicking people off their policies is because of fire danger. They live in fire zones. We have lots of fires all over California, and we can't seem to do something about it. According to the LA Fire Department, 50% of all of the fires in LA City are caused by the homeless encampments. If we don't do something about the homeless encampments, we're going to continue to have fire problems all over the city and the county of Los Angeles, and we're going to continue to become more uninsurable. The other issue is crime and vandalism and theft. I know a lot of people, particularly small business owners that only have one location, who have been dropped from their policies, and they've cited crime as the reason. I've talked to one small business owner recently who said that even though their particular shop has not been the victim of a crime in some time, that crime in their area is so high, they can't get a California insurance company to give them a policy. They had to go out of state, which means if something requires them to go to court, they're going to have to find an attorney in a different state to try to litigate whatever needs to be litigated. If we don't do something about the homeless encampments and crime, I don't see how homeowners or small businesses are going to be insurable.
John, you bring up one of the great collateral consequences of having a runaway homeless population and encampments all over our county. which is the ability to just get insurance, whether, again, it's fire insurance or property or theft or liability insurance. And we're talking basically the small mom and pop stores. The CVS's, Walgreens have national policies, but the small ones have to go into the marketplace. And if no one's either offering the policy or is prohibitively expensive because of the homeless situation, then yes, they're absolutely going to go out of business. I am a huge backer of something called the HOST team, Homeless Outreach Services Team. As a co-founder of the LA Sheriff's Foundation, I've gone out with the sheriffs who partner with the agencies in government, whether it's the Homeless Service Authority, Department of Mental Health, Department of Public Works. They go out to these homeless encampments and they execute a 5-point plan. They identify literally every homeless person at an encampment. They assess their needs. Why are they there? Is it mental illness? Is it drug addiction? Did they just lose their job? Whatever. They then come up with a individualized outreach program. So if you have a mental illness, they'll get you mental illness support services. Same thing with drug services. Same thing with helping you get a job. Or if you're a vet, connect you with the VA. But then what they do, if they don't actually have those people move out at that point, they put a sign down. And it says, in 14 days, we are going to come with the trucks. We're going to take your stuff. We're going to warehouse it, but you're gone. And so they've been doing this basically for 7 years. They've moved thousands of people across this county. They've only had to arrest 2. And the reason is they actually treat the homeless humanely. This process that I just described occurred in Venice Beach. It occurred at the VA on the west side. It occurs under freeway ramps in the river beds as well. And the homeless understand that they're not there to harass them. They're there to help them. And they voluntarily, by the end of this process, actually move. So there are solutions out there that have been done to move homeless encampments humanely, but they do have a stick at the end, which is that they don't move. If they don't move as ordered, their stuff will be picked up, warehouse, and then they will be out of that location. So I think more and more of these programs need to be implemented across the county that will hopefully bring back the insurance companies to recognize that LA County is worth insuring again.
George Gascon has chosen not to pursue the death penalty in any or all cases that previous district attorneys, including Jackie Lacey, Steve Cooley, and others, would have certainly pursued, including for an individual who allegedly assassinated a Los Angeles County sheriff's deputy in recent weeks. If elected district attorney, would you bring back the death penalty? Would you seek the death penalty for the county's most heinous criminals?
I think the death penalty should only be considered in the most heinous situations. In the rare situations like an assassination of a police officer, like if we had our own Las Vegas massacre and 56 people were to be mowed down. God forbid there should ever be a bomb at a stadium and 10,000 people were to be tragically killed. I think that the death penalty in those rare situations with the most heinous murderers should be considered. And the way it's considered in the district attorney's office, or at least the way it used to be considered, is by the most senior membership who have hundreds of years of collective experience evaluating whether the evidence is beyond a reasonable doubt and the mitigating versus the aggravating factors warrant the death penalty in that case. It's then subjected to a jury, which has to vote both on the liability and the actual punishment, then a judge, then the entire state appellate system, then the entire federal appellate system. So should we absolutely, in these rare and heinous situations, consider the death penalty? 100%. Whether or not you actually go forward with the death penalty obviously depends highly on the circumstances and the situations involved.
Gavin Newsom is the man who initially appointed George Gascon to be the district attorney in San Francisco County. He supported him when he ran for DA last time around. I don't know if he has made an endorsement in this particular race as Gascon is running for re-election. He's also the one who appoints the judges that have certainly leaned in the soft on crime direction. He's the one that appoints the parole boards, which have been voting pretty consistently to let criminals, including very dangerous criminals, out of prison early. Do you support Gavin Newsom, and did you support him in the last election?
No, I didn't support Gavin Newsom in the last election. But as I've said many, many times, as DA, I'm going to be able to work with anybody across the aisle, on the same aisle, it doesn't matter. A DA is elected in a nonpartisan race, which means that your party affiliation is not part of the ballot. It won't be on the ballot anywhere. And I believe a DA needs to be fiercely independent. I think that George Gascon shows what happens when you let a political ideology determine what cases you bring instead of the evidence as to whether or not a crime has actually occurred. And I think, again, Gascon shows why party and political ideology should not be what is animating and controlling a district attorney. Independence, which is what I can bring to the job, is absolutely that quality. So working with Gavin Newsom, for instance, Gavin Newsom approved CARES courts. These are the courts that are now going to give that judge the additional option to order someone into a residential program if they have serious mental illness. When Gavin Newsom gets it right, terrific. Gavin Newsom just allocated $267 million to DA's offices and sheriff's offices up and down the state to deal with smash and grab crimes. Interestingly, by the way, the one DA's office, the largest DA's office that did not get a penny of Gavin Newsom's money, the LA DA's office. Gascon said he didn't even bother to apply for it. When Gavin Newsom came down, if you recall, when we had all those train robberies going on, and he actually took off his tie and his jacket and was cleaning up garbage by the train yards, he said this was horrible, what he saw going on. And again, who wasn't there at that moment in time next to Gavin Newsom? George Gascon. So I very much think that Gavin Newsom's endorsement in 2020 of George Gascon will not reoccur in 2024. I think Mayor Karen Bass, who wouldn't even invite George Gascon to the press conference announcing her organized retail crime force or crime task force, I think Mayor Bass is not going to back Gascon because they were embarrassed by the policies he has carried out and the lack of safety that they have created.
Nathan Hochman, former Assistant U.S. Attorney General and candidate for L.A. County District Attorney. You can find him online at nathanhochman.com. Nathan Hochman, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much.